Recorded the clock. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Follow Your Bliss, how taking the road less traveled can lead to your best life. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center, and so happy to have you. This is our fourth installation of a Follow Your Bliss panel. We have so many awesome people in our area that we started doing this during COVID, and it has really been a fun and interesting discussion and an interesting way to connect with others, get to know others. If you have sound in the background, please be sure to mute. We are recording this session. Before we get started, I just had a few announcements of some upcoming programs that we have. As you know, Silver Spring Town Center presents over 125 free arts and entertainment programs and events throughout the year. We have been virtual, except in the warm half of the year, we had returned to doing outdoor in-person programs. And we are doing that once again, returning to Veterans Plaza with Twilight Tuesdays in May. And then I want you to mark your calendars for 13th Annual Silver Spring Blues Festival and Silver Spring Blues Week, which is June 8th. It's a 10-day week, June 8th through 18th. And we have a mix of in-person events and virtual events with the festival day, all day Saturday in downtown Silver Spring. We will be announcing our lineup soon. We also have an art workshop this Thursday evening with Cindy Renteria. It's a Starry Night painting workshop, so that's for all ages and abilities. I hope you can join us. And then next Wednesday, April 13th, we have two programs that day, including Sparkle at 2 o'clock, Building the Future Food System with Hugo Morgollon of Fresh Farm. And we also, that evening on the 13th, we have two book authors talking about their book, The Urban Garden, 101 Ways to Grow Food and Beauty in the City, with authors Kathy Jentz and Terry Spate. Then on Thursday, April 14th, we have Murmurations in the studio with eco-artist Suzanne Hostetler. And then Wednesday, April 20th, we're back with more comedy, and Chipp Jones is in the house. He's our host of the next trio of comedy shows, Spring Zing. Join us on Wednesday, April 20th for the first one at 9 p.m. We're doing them a little later because we find that the comedy folks like later hours. Have you noticed that too? And then if you are an artist of any ability, you are invited to take part in our Naturally, a virtual community art exhibition in celebration of Earth Day on Earth Day, Friday, the 22nd of April. And that's hosted by artist Marcy Wolf Hubbard. Just send her some photos of your artwork and the titles, and we can look at it together. And it's usually a great discussion as well. And then also for other people along the creative spectrum, from writers to artists, filmmakers, poets, and all in between, we have our next art salon on Monday, April 25th. And then on the 27th, we have Spring Forward, create a vision board to help you bloom this season and beyond. Are you noticing a theme here as we celebrate spring? That's hosted by Madeline Caliendo with the Silver Spring Time Bank. And then on Thursday, April 28th, we have an interesting and very serious discussion called From Victimhood to Aggression, Russia's Path to War with Ukraine, with Gulnaz Sharafutinova, PhD, author of The Red Mirror, Putin's Leadership and Russia's Insecure Identity. So that is bound to be an interesting discussion. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Montgomery College, Maryland State Arts, and many others. And now let's get to the program. Follow Your Bliss program. I'd like to introduce our host, Kim Levone, who was on our last one that we did, I think, in December. And she did such a great job on that. I thought, oh, let's invite Kim to be the host for today. So good to have you, Kim.
Great to be here. Thank you, Lisa.
So Kim is, as many of you know, she's the founder and producer of Improbable Comedy, a comedy production group based in Silver Spring, Maryland. And be sure to put your stuff about your upcoming shows, by the way, in the chat and let us know too. When Kim was deep into her social work career and busy with 4 kids, she had the bug to put on a show. In May of 2022, she produced a comedy show called Improbable Comedy. The name is a nod to the fact that with no theater, comedy, or business background, it was an unlikely venture. That first, and it's probably not 2022, is it 2020?
This will be our 11th year anniversary. So it was actually 20.
Oh, so it should have been 2012. But we have 2022. So it's your 11th year. So this was 2012. She produced a comedy show called Improbable Comedy. That first show at Vicino's in Silver Spring was a success, and the name stuck. Improbable Comedy has produced over 150 shows since then, mostly in the DC area, but also in Brazil, where Levone lived for several years. The focus is on bringing people out for high quality shows and also highlighting funny performers for marginalized groups, with an emphasis on booking more women comedians, immigrant comics, as well as performers with disabilities. Local shows include the mother of all comedy shows, Comedy as a Second Language, and Stand Up Silver Spring. Comedy is still a serious side hustle for Kim. By day, she runs an outpatient mental health clinic. So it's a very related field. So see a profile of Montgomery Magazine article here in our newsletter, and other announcements and upcoming Improbable Comedy shows at improbablecomedy.com. And
you're very nice to read that whole long thing.
No, well, it's great.
I do want to make sure that the sound is okay, because I have gotten feedback sometimes that my computer can be a little muffled. So if it is, please pop it in the chat, and I can always join on my phone, which is definitely clearer. So
I think it sounds great. Let us know if you have any sound issues. You can message us privately or anyway. And I just want to give special mention to our panelists. 2 of our panelists are board members, Jannelle Cortes and Yukari Horiba, and Yukari is married to Adam Koons. So it's our first time having a married couple on here. And then we also have Chipp Jones and Pete Tantisunthorn. You've taught me how to pronounce your name many years ago, but everybody just knows you as Pete. He's the only Pete in town. So anyway, one of our panelists may not be able to make it tonight, Sibyl, but she will come if she can. Anyway, it's bound to be an interesting discussion. So there is a slight muffle, but not too bad for Kim.
How's that for sound?
Well, is it okay? You've got me turned off too. Okay, you have to have both turned off. Like, yeah, that sounds.
So you should be hearing me through my phone, but seeing me through my computer. Hopefully that's good. Okay.
And then it also helps if the rest of us mute when you're not on. So go ahead and take it away, Kim.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you, Lisa, for the nice introduction and for inviting me to be the host of this great panel. I was on this panel as a participant in December, and it was really interesting. I love Silver Spring. I've lived here for the last 20 years after living in a bunch of different places, and I really love the people here. And I think this is a great way to showcase just how rich a community we live in. So I appreciate it. Thank you also to all the sponsors and to our panelists, who we will get to. I'm very excited just to be doing this with you tonight. So I'll tell you, I actually I'm recently showered because I just was out in my garden. And so I will introduce this tonight by saying that we are all many people, in addition to what we may do as a day gig and what we also do maybe as a passion thing. And sometimes that is the same thing. But I was, because I wanted to get outside between work and this. And I was in my garden planting seeds and turning the dirt and putting little seedlings in. And it made me think about life in transition and how some things start from seed, but some things don't, and they start half grown, and then we have to nurture them. And I like the idea of using tonight to talk about bliss or passion or whatever your passion project might be, or that your work might be your passion. And that sometimes we get to that because we choose it, and sometimes we get to it because we have to, and we make it the thing that is great. So I'm looking forward to hearing from each of our panelists in terms of where they are now and what brought them to where they are now. I'll just say Lisa gave a great introduction. I have worked for 25 years as a clinical social worker, and I do run a mental health clinic. That's my day gig. And my serious side hustle is producing stand-up comedy, which I also love. So I came to that as it's not quite a second career, but a second thing. And it is fun to have multiple things in your life that you can dig into and dive into. The way I think this is going to work for the next hour plus is we're going to give each of our panelists a chance to introduce themselves. I just asked them to say kind of where they are now and a few milestones along the way that brought them there. And then I will ask a few questions. If you, the audience, this wonderful Silver Spring audience, have things to contribute for the beginning, please pop them in the chat, just so we'll make sure that we're jogging along and everyone has time. And of course, we'll try to get to everybody's questions and comments. And this will be a great discussion. So to that end, let us start. I would like to start first by asking Yukari Horiba, if you would introduce yourself, share a little bit about where you are and how you got here.
Okay, I'm Yukari Horiba. I'm still Japanese. I want to be Japanese for future too. Number one, I think being Japanese is really cool being in America. I mean, I work in the special education, and then ask me, what nationality you are? And you speak Japanese. Wow, already I am popular. I mean, I am really liking being Japanese more than I am being in Japan, in America. But how I ended up here, of course, I have my husband, Adam, but I didn't meet Adam in Japan or America. I met my husband in Africa. My journey started when I was 19. Actually, that was my chapter 2 because I was being in Japan until 19 years old. But I met my husband, not Adam. I met my ex-husband who were Sudanese. I was in United University, and then I was just coming into freshman, and then already he was senior, so he was leaving. So I actually went with him to Africa, and I had a culture shock. I didn't know anything about Africa. Of course, it's not in Kenya or Tanzania or popular place in Africa. It was in Sudan, Khartoum, Sudan. Everywhere I look was just color of sand, and even the drinking water was sandy. I never had those kind of atmosphere being in Japan. I mean, I lived in the city. I was city girl, and then put myself in that kind of atmosphere. But I really liked my ex-husband, so I made my life nicer a little bit. And then I didn't know anything about Sudanese culture. It was Muslim country, and women there is not so respected. And I was always with the women, men with men culture, I mean society, and then women. So I learned how to cook Sudanese food, which is, you know, the women talk while we were cooking. So I learned also Arabic. It was I was 19, so it was really young, and my brain was still like a sponge. Every, language was easy to get into. And at the end, I could even argue with my husband, ex-husband, in Arabic. So that much I was good in Arabic. But I couldn't make it. 7 years I was there, and then I had 3 children, beautiful children. And I had, learned a lot of culture. I met a lot of good people, nice people. I still have a contact. And then I still have a contact with these 3 children too. They are already old. My oldest is 43 years old. And I have 2 grandchildren from her. And I'm really happy, grandma. Anyway, so that was my chapter 2. And then chapter 3 was being in the United States with my husband. I met him in Khartoum, Sudan. And I have 2 children, 2 sons from him. And one of the child needed to have special education. He was dyslexic. I can't say the word. So well. Sorry. So he couldn't read well. We didn't know why, because I was not familiar of this kind of condition. And he was in the American school. Adam and I, because of Adam's occupation, we were in Haiti, we were in Kenya, and in Kenya we found him like this condition. And the American school teachers say to us, "You are American, so why don't you go back to America? You have a better education." But before, it was in Kenya, but I wanted to really, since we are in Africa, and then 2 children and then 3 other children, I wanted to somehow unite it. So we went to Sudan again with the 2 children, and then they met together. So these 5 kids we have, they are half sister, half brother. They are now related, and then they have a connection and some communication. I really did a good job for this situation. And anyway, we came back to United States after 12 years of being in international life. I liked it, but we wanted to think about children's education first. So we came back. And I wanted to know more about special education, being a mother with special need kids. So I started to look for a job. 16 years being in the United States. I've been working in the one school, special education school, which is the foundation school in Gaithersburg. And I really feel good about myself. This job was, I never did something like this before, but to help the kids one at a time. And I have a really good graduation rate for these kids. Graduating, they're really difficult place to come way, their household is difficult situation. Sometimes they don't have any breakfast to come to school. And then I am the one feeding these kids. Sometimes they don't have socks to come to our school. We are providing these kids even the socks. I feel those kids are one of my kids when I am in school. And I really feel grateful when they are successful day by day. But this was probably my chapter 4 of my life, being a special education educator. And that's one of the things I like to talk about because this is something I never even thought about. I can do something like this. And I am very proud of myself being in United States, being with very difficult children. My special education kids are all emotionally difficulty, ADHD, bipolar kids, I don't know, ODD, many, difficulties they have, and then they need to graduate. So I'm helping them every day. I really like it. And being with Adam is another thing. I met Adam in Khartoum in Sudan, and he's an anthropologist. I didn't know what anthropologist does. And then he told me he watch people. And sometimes he watch me. And then behavior. I don't know, he likes to watch just people going to the traveling, and he just watch people. I learned a lot, people are really interesting and in different way. It's not like what I do, my way. There is lots of way. Yeah, I learned a lot from him. And I go with him to the traveling interesting way because he is showing me different way of where I traveled before. So, I learned culture, different food. Also, one of the things I love eating. I am lucky. I'm tiny and I can eat tons.
You know what, Yukari, I'm going to pause you there.
Okay.
Because that was a great introduction. And you have so many interesting life experiences. And also, I think it's great to hear a woman with a lot of interesting life experiences really expound on it. So I appreciate you sharing so much of your background with us and kicking things off. I was going to go to someone else, but I actually feel like it might make the most sense to have Adam introduce himself next, just like fill in some of those gaps and share a little bit about yourself. So Adam, why don't you take it away?
What a surprise. So I'll try to be brief-ish. So I started off very early on as an outsider, and I didn't feel like a part of any clique or any group, or not sports, or not a lot of things. So I was always outside looking in and observing people. And eventually I learned that people can do that actually professionally. They're called anthropologists. They observe people and try to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And further down in anthropology, you are participant observer, which means you do have to participate. But I wound up becoming an anthropologist because I get to watch people, as Yukari said. Also, my parents were both second generation, very poor Jewish from Jewish immigrant households. So I got a very big dose growing up of there's a lot of poor people. There are a lot of poor people struggling and suffering in the world. My dad's career did very well. So we grew up affluent, but I was always reminded at every step that we are lucky, but the world is filled with people suffering and people who are poor. Anyhow, went off to become an anthropologist. I am what's called, you probably haven't heard this, a practitioner anthropologist, which means I'm not a professor. I've never been in a university. I've never taught. I did get a PhD in a university, but then got out as quick as I could. Because my feeling also was, as an anthropologist, if you learn all this stuff about people and understand why they do what they do, can't you use that to help them? Instead of just sit back and write about, you know, I saw them do this and I saw them do that. Well, how can we turn that around and help people be not so poor and not suffer as much? So that's a practitioner anthropologist. There aren't very many of us. We actually work in the real world. So I took a look at the title of this presentation, Follow Your Bliss. I identified 4 elements, and I'll be brief, but one of those elements of my bliss was helping people. Another one was working in exotic and unusual places, places that are always completely different from each other. A third element was meeting interesting people with totally different cultures, where it's a challenge for me to understand and know who they are, what their beliefs are, and what will help them, to understand from those people how I can help them better. And the fourth element is to share travel adventures. So I put all of those elements together and wound up focusing on international disaster and emergency response, which is being an anthropologist, working in international organizations, places like CARE International, Save the Children, the United Nations, U.S. Agency for International Development, and seeing people at their worst moment in the middle of a disaster, understanding them well enough to know how best to aid them out of that trauma and assist them out of that catastrophe. So I wound up working for over 20 years overseas, designing programs, managing programs, literally acquiring hundreds of millions of dollars, and working in, you know, fun places like Afghanistan and Iraq and Haiti and Somalia and Afghanistan and Ethiopia, like, you know, like garden spots. And one of my earliest assignments was to work with the American Embassy in Sudan. So I was there because Sudan has perpetual famine, perpetual food insecurity, perpetual cross-religious war. And I was there, I was actually known in the embassy as the famine officer, because it was my job to figure out how badly people were starving. Kind of interesting job. Anyhow, American Embassy party, Japanese participant in the American Embassy party, Yukari. So that's how we met. American Embassy, Japanese Embassy, bingo. Onward from there, I mean, we continued moving around to different countries. You know, we lived in Haiti for 4 years, which also is one of the poorest countries in the world, although it's in the Caribbean. So we used to tell people, oh yeah, we live in the Caribbean, but it was Haiti. And in Kenya, and even when I came back to the United States, I wound up, anytime you saw something in CNN, I would be on an airplane the next day. So, you know, when the Haiti earthquake hit in 2010, I was leading a Boy Scout meeting. I got an alert on my phone, excused myself from the Boy Scout meeting, packed, and went to Haiti the next day. So that's the kind of bliss that I was focusing on, is exotic, interesting, culturally challenging, financially and psychologically challenging, and in the end, helping people, and then having Yukari as a partner to all of that. And she traveled to many of those places with me. And then when we're not doing that, we travel around the US by motorcycle because I grew up in the US. I've seen 49 states, fortunately. She started at 0. So little by little, we take these mega motorcycle trips and we're chipping away at seeing every state in the US by motorcycle. And I'm just going to stop there because I mean, I'm living my bliss all the time. Right now, by the way, I work for FEMA. So I'm not in Ukraine. I'm not in Somalia. I'm not in Afghanistan. But I go to places like Nebraska and Puerto Rico and Minnesota and Louisiana because I decided to help Americans for a change. So I work for FEMA now, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing about your life with Yukari and just your own background and the way you, the path you took to something that not everybody does. So it has some flavor in there. I appreciate you giving so much detail and also breadth. I'm going to turn it over to Jannelle. I had a chance to chat with everybody in the panel, except for Jannelle before we tried. We really did our best to connect, but you know, two busy ladies, it was hard to find a moment. So I'm also excited to hear a little more about you. Would you introduce yourself and a little bit of where you are and how you got here?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I didn't mean to be elusive, but I literally just flew in today from Chicago. I did a quick 48 hours there with my husband, and it was fabulous. We got to eat amazing pizza at Pequod's or Pequod's, I think it's called. That was my first time there, and we got to do all of the touristy things, the architectural tour and whatnot, Willis Tower. And it was just fabulous. I'm definitely, bliss and adventure go hand in hand. I love new experiences. I've always been like that for as long as I can remember. That's actually my sister that just came in. Hey, sis. I'm at my mother's house right now in the DC area or in the Maryland area where I grew up. But I actually live in New York. So I split my time between New York, the Washington area, Washington, Maryland area. And I just recently moved back from 3.5 years in Cuba, where I met my husband on my first trip out there. And he's now been here for a little over 2 years. He just got here right before they closed the airport. March 13, 2020. So he's a lucky ducky, and we've had a lot of amazing adventures together while he's been here in the United States. It was super windy in Chicago. I see Yukari asked the question. Yes, it was crazy windy. I was definitely underdressed. But, you know, the really cool thing about those architectural tours is that they make hot toddies for you. And I made sure to have one of those, and that definitely helped me not get sick. But going back to traveling is one of the things that brings me immense joy. I think in a funny way, I have a little bit of Yukari and Adam inside of me. I am definitely a person that seeks to help out other people and be of use. And I think that I have an inner anthropologist inside me. For a very long time, I taught dance classes. And it's what's interesting about teaching dance is that not everyone is like, woohoo, dance class. You know, I'm that type of person because from the moment that I can remember, I was that kid that wanted to jump up on a table, embarrass my mom and my entire family and like dance all about. But that's always been me. There are a lot of people who come to dance class and they're a lot more shy. Some people, it's difficult for them to look at themselves in the mirror for whatever reason. And it can be very intimidating because you've got your folks like me. I'm a natural ham. You know, I want to be in the front of the class and show off and show out and have a good time. And then there are people who they'll come to class and they can't stand people like me, and, you know, and they're intimidated. And, you know, it could be difficult. And so I always felt that my job as a dance teacher was to not pick out the best or highlight anyone or anything like that, but to treat everyone as if, you know, they're amazing and that they're doing their best, and I'm acknowledging it. Because I think that when you are first generation, and not everybody looks like you, and maybe you're not the typical dancer, right? Because of body size or, you know, skin color or hair. I used to always get in trouble in my ballet class about this. It's important now that we're all adults and I get adults that come to me, that I try to make them feel as welcomed as possible. And so I made that a point to see that person, that to be kind and see that development while I was teaching. And it was really beautiful for me to have people come to me and say, wow, Jannelle, I had 2 less feet, and look at what, you know, we were able to accomplish in class just because you thought that, you know, I was worthy of, you know, your attention and your lessons, and you gave me a chance. And I used to dance because it was therapy for me. I never thought that it was going to be the type of thing that would help other people. I just thought that I had this gift, you know, and that it made me happy. It made me forget about all my troubles, and it was just about me. But when I started teaching and I started seeing how good it made other people feel about themselves and the community that we built, then, I mean, I couldn't even imagine how good that was going to make me feel. And then it became like I was addicted to that, just making people feel good. From the dancing, you know, because I teach everything from salsa to belly dancing, um, Afro-Cuban. I mean, I've done a little bit of everything, samba. And I wanted to show my students that it's not just about technique. If you really want to understand the art and the mood of what it is that you're learning, we got to go to the source, right? So I started taking my students to Egypt and Turkey and Greece, and we started going to Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Cuba, all these amazing places, to really understand what made people the way they were, why they danced the way they were, what were the stories in the dances, right? I mean, you can follow a whole migration story if you follow a rhythm. You can see it started here in West Africa, and then it went to Colombia, and then it became this, and it became salsa and all of that. So I grew really fascinated. I was very fascinated by that. I didn't expect to learn everything that I've learned just, you know, from teaching dance and traveling. And I didn't expect to uh, give so many people, you know, so much joy. So for me, bliss is like you discover it for yourself, and then it transmits and transfers to the people that are around you. And yeah, I'm in a beautiful place, because I will say that I've had the support. You got to have somebody on your team, right? Whether it's your parent or parents, you know, friends that support you, or something that really helps and keeps you going. And I've had that. So I feel really grateful, and I'm glad that I can be that for other people. Um, and I think you got to be a little fearless too, and step out on faith. And I'm one of those like hippy dippy people. I truly believe that if you know, put the work out there and you have a little bit of faith and just take the risk, the universe will reward you, you know? So yeah, I think that has following my bliss for me has been about being fearless and doing what in my heart I feel is the right thing, and connecting with people and watching them grow, and being super duper grateful that I've been gifted this opportunity to do this. So.
Thank you, Jannelle. It's great. It's great to hear your process, and also just talking about dance. It sounds very beautiful. I just want to invite the people who maybe joined us as we've already been going, and maybe you came in or are just joining us now. We're midway through our presentation, beginnings of our introductions and presentations, and please feel free to put comments in the chat. I see some people have already started sharing, but it's really, it enriches, enriches the experience for everybody the more you contribute, and putting in the chat just allows us to keep the conversation going. Okay, so we have two very interesting people that we definitely want to get to. So let's turn now to Chipp Jones. Chipp, can you introduce yourself to our great audience?
Sure. Hello, I'm Chipp Jones, and I'm glad to be here. Following my bliss. I mean, for me, bliss is everything. I'm very interested in all facets of our existence, and that's been part of my joy and part of my problem. I am one of those jack of all trades, masters of none. Everything interests me. And you never know when stuff's going to pop up. When Adam was talking about he and Yukari living 4 years in Haiti, I'm like, wow, that's great, and it's connected to me because my grandfather was the ambassador to the United States from Haiti, and my mother was born in Port-au-Prince. And that's what I find most blissful about life, is that there are all these things that are interconnected that you a lot of times are unaware of. I think that's one of the things that led me to becoming a comedian. When you're doing it right, you're like Toto and the Wizard of Oz. You're pulling back the curtain, showing things that people didn't know, or stuff that they may have forgotten they knew all along. I started out wanting to be a surgeon like my father. When I got to college, though, I actually wound up in mechanical engineering, and then decided that I didn't want to be a mechanical engineer. From that, I bounced to doing video production work, working on projects like space flight for PBS. From there, I went to road managing rock bands. From that, being a manager at the Hard Rock Cafe. From that, being a computer consultant, which is what my day job is now. I have my own computer consulting business. And then I do comedy at night. My wife says that I am a formidable opponent in Trivial Pursuit because I am interested in everything. And when I get on Google looking for an answer to one question, 2 hours later, I have leaped from that original question to somewhere totally unrelated, And I think that's what's fascinating to me, is that how things are linked, not only subjects, but people, My wife, her great uncle was Shemp of the Three Stooges, So, and in that connection, it makes her cousins to Barney Frank. It's like we are constantly connected to each other in ways that we are almost never aware of. And I find that fascinating. And I find it blissful, uncovering those secret hidden connections between people. I think that sums it up for me. I guess I could have gone longer.
I love your incidental name dropping, which seems so modest, but it's very impressive and interesting.
Well, I always tell people that I've always been tangentially connected to great people, such as my grandfather's best friend was Ralph Bunche, who got the Nobel Peace Prize for his work in Israel. And I can remember sitting on my grandfather's knee when he was having conversations with Ralph Bunche. Mm-hmm. My best friend, his stepfather, is Eddie Floyd, who wrote the song Knock on Wood and was a VP at Stax Records, because I grew up in Memphis. And I can remember times when his mother would run us out of the house and say, you got to get out of the house because we got company coming over. And we would sneak back to see who it was. And it would be Isaac Hayes or Rufus Thomas or Bruce Springsteen. It's like I've always been on that tangential side. My sister, who has now passed, was a documentary filmmaker. Through her, I met Denzel Washington, Robert Townsend. You know, my wife was the executive producer of Talk of the Nation on NPR. Through her, I met, you know, Dave Chappelle, you know, Wanda Sykes, you know, so I've always been close to fame, just never famous.
Well, in Silver Spring, you have a little bit of cachet. Well, anyway, thank you, Chipp, for introducing yourself and for talking about your own background and your many interesting pursuits. And now, rounding us out, I would give an introduction, but he needs no introduction. We're going to turn it over to our last presenter for this before we get to the open kind of discussion of the panel. Please welcome Pete Tan.
Thanks so much, Kim, and thanks, Lisa, and thanks everyone for attending today. My name is Peter Tantisunthorn. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I'm one of 5 kids. As kids, we would often walk from our home in D.C. to Parkway Deli or Rock Creek Drugstore, if that gives you any kind of sense of geography of where we grew up. Really close to Maryland, really close to Silver Spring. In high school, I would take the Silver Spring Metro down to high school on a daily basis. And I moved away when I was 17. I went to college, and then I was working in Florida for a while. And then I moved back to Silver Spring in 2008 to be close to my parents, who had moved to Chevy Chase in the meantime, for which I will not judge them. But that being said, I have been living in Silver Spring since 2008. And I've been working in e-commerce and agencies in marketing and communications. And I was living in Silver Spring specifically for about 2 or 3 years before I was really living in Silver Spring as it's 20-something to live close to DC. And just as I did in high school, I would take the Metro down to DC to meet friends and have drinks and mingle and do the things that 20-year-olds do. And I was here for several years before one day I went and I got a cup of coffee and I had this really incredible conversation with this absolutely beautiful woman. And you probably all know her. Her name's Lene. She runs Kefa Cafe. It's on Bonifant, and they now have a location in Wheaton, Maryland, the Wheaton Library. And it was this conversation that I had with her that I realized I'm living in this part of town, this city, if you want to call it that. And I was completely not ignoring it and not really open to the idea that there was this community in front of me that was rich and had such wonderful businesses and wonderful characters and such so many different ways to experience life and so many different perspectives to share. So I've been working in an agency for a while. I was reading this blog called Just Up the Pike, and I stalked the author of it. I knew he was going to go to the 15-year anniversary at Kefa Cafe. So I went there and I talked to the author, whose name is Dan Reed. And I said, I really want to be more involved in my community. I have some ideas, and I pitched them to him. And he said, you really need to meet this woman named Megan Moriarty. And at that time, Megan Moriarty was the owner of Fenton Street Market. And I met her and we started collaborating on these different projects. And I left my agency and I tried to start a marketing agency of my own that was focused on small and medium-sized businesses in Silver Spring. I really was looking at how incredible these businesses were with respect to creating the fabric of the community, creating spaces where people could meet, creating commerce, creating jobs, and creating opportunities for people. And I really wanted to be involved in that. And so I spent the next 5 or 6 years trying to make this marketing agency happen with mixed results. Ultimately, over that time, I ended up pursuing my MBA, and I currently work in nonprofit marketing, primarily doing consulting. But that period that I spent in this community, the time that I've lived here, I've moved since then from Sligo Grandview into East Silver Spring. I'm just 10 steps closer to the businesses that I want to frequent often. But it was in doing these activities and these different types of marketing and events in this area where I got to meet Lisa and learn about the wonderful work that she does. And we started looking at ways we could collaborate in doing events and things like that. I met Kim, and she told me all about comedy and this incredible idea she had to start producing shows here. And seeing her add another layer of depth to our community and filling, and these are individuals who you look at in the community who are, you can have a conversation with them and have a wonderful conversation, but you can also see the work that they're doing and the way that they recognize gaps in the community and say, I have a skill, I have a talent, I have experience that I want to bring and fill a space in this community that has fed me in so many different ways. So my bliss in a lot of ways is just being involved in my community, thinking about how I interact with the people around me, with the spaces around me. And I really appreciate living in Silver Spring, and I appreciate being here.
You are exactly the right person to round up that discussion. First of all, because I really love how you brought it back to Silver Spring. And we had started by saying what a rich community this is and how wonderful it is to be highlighting some of the interesting people in Silver Spring. And I just love that you talked about that, because it also reminded me of when I first met you, and back then Megan, and also yeah, it's just really fun to think about how many of these layers and connections have been made. So I'm going to ask 2 questions now and give the panelists a choice of which one you want to ask. We'll give everybody a chance to say something additional. The 2 questions that I'd like to pose that hopefully will get you thinking is, one side of the coin is that many of you talked about either a challenge or a barrier, something that you had to overcome or cope with or manage over time. So either talk about that, something that is challenging or has been challenging in getting you where you are. Or the flip side of that same question, if it might be easier to answer this one, is what does success look like? Or how would you define, or how do you define success for yourself in this area that is bliss? I mean, Pete described one example of being just involved in your community. Certainly that is a way, but what are other ways that you might define success? And because I think as we're presenting to this wonderful group of people who are attending, some of them are just curious about your pathway, and others may actually walk away inspired to pursue something. So it's helpful to think about, what do you see as either your success or what's a challenge that you've had to overcome? I don't think I need to call on you. I think we can just, whoever would like to share, feel free to share.
I can start. A challenge for me, I guess, would, have to be, I'm a Black man in America. I mean, and it's interesting because, when people meet me over the phone or they hear my name, Chipp Jones, they never assume that. And, it's weird when Jannelle was talking about hair, because you probably can't tell from the way I'm seated. But I also have long dreadlocks. They basically go to almost the floor, about 6 inches from the floor. And, ever since I was a child, people have always assumed that I had some kind of limitation because of the color of my skin. I grew up, which I consider my hometown, as Memphis, Tennessee, in the Bible Belt, heart of the South, where it was even harder. But the other side of that coin of success, for me, success is making connections with other people. And that's part and parcel of dealing with the struggles that I have. Is because I believe that once people actually get to know me and see me for who I am, then that stuff falls away. So I think the two are intertwined, they're connected. And the true bliss, I think, for every human being is feeling connected to someone else, feeling connected to a community of other people.
Absolutely. Thank you. Who else would like to give an answer?
I'll give it a shot, and because I can cheat, because it's so easy for me. For the question number 2, how do you define success? Here's how I cheat. I go into a disaster zone, and if a series of steps that I take, and I know that I'm the one that took those steps on a team, it's always a team effort, and that a couple weeks or a couple months or even a couple days later, people have clean water, where they didn't have any water that was that wouldn't make them sick, or where a series of steps that I take that may be long and arduous and frustrating, and then all of a sudden women are growing crops that they can sell for income for their families. So some of these are short term, like next week you have toilets and clean water. Some of these take a year or two, so that we now have goats and extra vegetables to nourish our kids. But I can define success by actually seeing it. And it doesn't always work. But for those times it works, it's absolutely worth every late night hour.
I feel when I did it, something fulfill kind of feeling is when the graduate student come back to our school and then say, I am working in such place, or I got a degree, as I'm working in the medical field. I really feel, I cry. I mean, these kids are really helpful every day. I really struggled with these kids. I feel like they come back to us. They are also proud of themselves, I guess. So that's why they wanted to come and say, hi, who am I now? That time I really feel my success.
Great.
That is great.
Hi. No, I actually love that. I feel like there's a bit of a theme about impact. And I think that it's kind of twofold for me, because I absolutely see it when I, take something, whatever project that is, whether it's dance related or, it's an event that I put together, or it's this crazy trip, 7 cities in 2 weeks, something like that I've put together and I'm taking a group of people on. Yeah, I'm able to see those small successes, but right now I think about just where I am, in a good place, and being almost 43 years old and finally satisfied with the person that I am, and not necessarily, living up to an expectation or trying to defy a stereotype, or, just putting all of this pressure on myself that I did when I was younger, and feeling like, that I had to be all of this for my family, or, just all of this responsibility. My life has become so much more simplified. I don't know exactly when it happened. I think that maybe I was at a point professionally where I felt that with the dance, I had gone as far as I wanted to go. And I think that that happens to a lot of people who are artists, and their passion kind of becomes their job. And you get to a conflicting place, right? Because here you have this beautiful gift that you used to escape the world. And then now for a while, it became something for me that started to feel like a burden. And I was just at this crossroads, and it just clicked for me that, you know what, Jannelle, you have your accomplishments. You don't have to prove anything else to anybody. What do you want to do? What would make you happy? What does that look like for you? I didn't have the answer exactly. I just took off and went to Cuba and decided this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go live here. And being in that different environment, away from all of the pressure, really allowed me the space to find myself, being of service to other people, and really living in a place where sometimes eating that day was success for them. You know what I mean? It just put a lot of things into perspective for me. And I just became grateful. I just became thank you for every single opportunity that I have. And once I started thinking about gratitude, as opposed to what do I need to check off the box tomorrow, it was a game changer for me. So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Because I was actually thinking as I mentioned, I was gardening. The song that was running through my head was Love the One You're With, which I don't actually know if that's the name of the song, but it just made me think, you can seek and seek and seek and seek. And sometimes success is like, this is what I got and I'm going to make it great. This isn't going to be exactly the thing I wanted, is exactly the thing I have. So I think it's, yes, I really appreciate your comments. Where's Pete? Would you mind sharing your thoughts?
Sure. I have the luxury of my bliss kind of not being tied to my livelihood anymore. So there's not necessarily as much gravitas to what I'm pursuit of my bliss. That being said, what I would say is the biggest challenge that I faced was part of some of the work that I do and I have done in the past is fairly public, and getting out into public spaces and putting out messaging and throwing events that may fail and putting together initiatives that may rub people the wrong way, and getting past that fear and that being okay with the risk and kind of turning down the volume on people who don't appreciate what you do. I work around a lot of creatives. I work around a lot of people who I love hearing about people share their ideas. I share my own ideas and I want to hear other people share theirs because it's super inspiring to me. A lot of times what people say to me is like, I'm not a good artist. Like, I don't know if I'm good at enough at X to do this, or I don't know if this business will succeed, and these types of things. And a lot of it is based around people's perceptions of them, right? Like, if I'm not a good artist, it's because so-and-so says I'm not a good artist, or because so-and-so says my business won't succeed, or they don't think there's an opportunity for this, or something along those lines. And there's really only, I feel like this is kind of a worn thing to say, but there's only one way to find out. And if you're not, the truth of the matter is, if you're not doing it for yourself, then I think it's worth asking if it's really your bliss. If it's dependent on other people's perceptions or their acceptance of what you're doing, you might want to think, is this really where my passion lies?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Another question that I wondered if people could talk about is there a guiding value that helped you frame? What? And I would just like to say, apropos Pete's comment about that sometimes your passion can be your job, and sometimes it is just your passion, and sometimes your job lets you pursue your passion, which is, I also think, completely legitimate. Is there something that was a guiding principle for you, something where when all the pieces were out there, was the one that you were going toward, or even still? I mean, maybe servant leadership is a piece of that, or just being challenged every day. I'm wondering if people have something that is a guiding principle in terms of being able to stick to something over a long period of time.
Can I just, I'm gonna quickly just say how, oh, I'm sorry, was someone else speaking?
No, you're good, go ahead.
Okay. What actually made my my passion for dance become my career was, I remember graduating in 2001 with ridiculous college debt. And there, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2001, you know, there was a bit of a recession. It took me forever to find a legit job. And in my field, it was impossible. I was a poli-sci major. I wish someone would have talked me out of that a long time ago. But I ended up working in a corporate setting that was torture for me. And I think that when you're a kid who grows up and, you know, you don't have that much money at your disposal. And, you know, my mom always told me, listen, your education is all that you have. You know, I felt like I stuck to the script and did every single thing I was supposed to as told, you know. And so I thought that in the end, at the end of this rainbow was going to be this quote unquote pot of gold, right? Or at least, yeah, shout out to my mama Belkis, who's amazing. But the thing is, she also had this American dream, right? That this is what you do. You get your good grades, you go to college, you're gonna be promised this amazing career. And when it didn't turn out that way, I said, you know, I mean, for me, I cannot be in any situation where I do not feel valued. And so it was very clear to me that I was just a number, that it was unfortunately a corporate setting where women were not very appreciated. And I'm almost grateful that it was so shocking that it really made me be like, I'm not doing this. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Because I feel literally sick going into work. This is not how this is supposed to be. And, you know, like I said before, you have to step out on faith and you got to be a little fearless. And there was this dance studio down the street from my university. And I walked over there one day and I just said, by chance, do you guys need any help over here? And they were like, so funny that you ask. We have 7 classes that we need to fill. And I looked at this measly paying job that was treating me like crap. And I was like, I can probably figure it out, right? Budget a little better and make it work with these 7 classes a week. And you know what? I put in my 2 weeks and that's exactly what I did. And then the rest was history, right? So for me, that's how my passion became my actual job for a while. And it served its purpose and it was wonderful for maybe about 16 years. And then I got to a place where I was like, okay, now what else? And so I think that you really have to honor that voice inside of you when it's no longer feeling right, to just say, okay, you know, I only get one chance at this life, right? So why torture myself or why torture ourselves? Just go, I'm like you, I forgot that, I'm sorry, the gentleman that was just speaking, like, you're never gonna find out unless you give it a shot, right? And so I say, go for it. I mean, the worst that can happen is, oh, well, it didn't work out, but you weren't happy beforehand, right? So the odds might be in your favor. That's it.
In terms of a guiding principle, I mean, there's so many things I could think of, but the one thing I'll say is put it in the air, and that is to say, speak it into reality. Tell people about what your bliss is, and I think about this term vision all the time. You know, we think about visionaries, we think about, you know, maybe Steve Jobs or Oprah or individuals who have these massive levels of scale. But I think vision is something that doesn't necessarily refer to scale as much as it refers to a clarity of picture. And if you have a small project or your bliss is not owning a giant network or owning the richest company in the world, detail that out. And when you tell people about that vision, about your bliss, what does it look like? How does it smell? What does it feel like? When you get those kinds of elements behind it and start talking about it in terms that are tactile and you can touch it and you can feel it, then it's something that becomes, you're putting it closer and closer into reality. And I think that that's something that's a pretty good guiding principle.
Anyone else want to chime in? Or I guess while you're thinking about that, I guess my last official question, and then we'll see if there are any questions from the from our audience. If you were going to, you know, peek back and look at the journey over the many milestones that you've had, and all the way back to your young self, what's the advice that you would give, or what's the advice you wish you had? What do you wish you knew, or what would you tell yourself? I mean, maybe we all know that it's great to have all the experiences, but yeah, share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I would tell my younger self to do differently, except maybe buy Microsoft when it was at $4 or something like that. But my journey has, you know, made me who I am today, who I am very comfortable with. And it's exposed me to all types of different peoples and situations. And I am thankful for that. And I think the thing that Peter touched on, you know, about, you know, really conceptualizing your bliss and putting it out there, because I think that, you know, any kind of project, especially blissful ones, are like children. You know, it takes a village. And if you put that out there, you never know who will come into your sphere who can help you realize that. I mean, one of the cool projects that I'm doing now in my computer consulting business is I am digitizing and archiving all the history of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which came to me through talking about, you know, the projects that I'm interested in doing in my day life with other people who connected me with people from SNCC. So I think that, you know, getting to your bliss is about, first of all, conceptualizing it, and then expressing that to people who you trust and know you, who can actually help you realize it.
I want to say, all my life, I was supported by surrounded people. I was not always not alone. I mean, I thought I was struggling, but always I got supported by some people. But those support, I needed to open my heart and accept that it is very important in the life, I guess.
I'm going to jump in. Okay. Kim?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, first, just to what Yukari said, I mean, I think that what she said, it wasn't what I was planning to say, but it's often very hard to be supported. You know, some of us have that, no, I'm okay, it's fine. You know, I remember 5 years ago when I had a bicycle crash on my way to work and I broke my pelvis, and I was lying there and people would go by and go, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. No big deal. And I didn't know that I had broken my pelvis, but my default is, I'm okay. But because it's very difficult to accept support and accept help and put yourself in that vulnerable position that I've been in so many times with Yukari, that what she said is extremely relevant, that it really does take being supported and being helped and being able to knowing how to be supported and how to support people. But that's not what I was going to say. I was struggling with your question about guiding principles, because, you know, I always wind up in a forum like this getting a question I've never had to think about before, and it hurts because it hurts to think about new questions. And guiding principle, I never really had to think about that and put it into words. And I started writing notes next to my computer. And I thought, well, being sincere, working honestly, giving things your best effort, are those my guiding principles when I do the kind of work I do. And what I wound up coming up with just on the fly here is just convincing yourself to believe that you are doing your very best, and to convince yourself that you are giving everything you can give, even if you don't see that success, that light at the end of the tunnel, that tangible thing that I talked about 20 minutes ago, that just to convince yourself that you're doing as well as you possibly can. And I think that that's guided me even when things look really, really crappy. And why do you keep going if things don't look encouraging? Because you know that you're giving your best. And what's the alternative? To quit? So those were my thoughts for that question. So thanks for the question, because it hurt my brain.
Well, I'm happy about that, because you had said that you've been on a number of panels, so I felt a little bit of pressure to come up with a good one.
Can I add something? I'm not sure if people can hear me. Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, this is Sue Goodwin, and I should set out from the beginning. I am Chipp Jones's wife of 33 years. But what I want to say about following your bliss, and something I have learned from Chipp, it's a daily expression. Every day you live out the realization of what you believe in, what your values are, what your personal best is. You know, and sometimes we fall to this idea that there's going to be some big finger from the sky that says you should go this way, you should go that way. It doesn't happen like that. It happens out of daily experience. And if every day we live true to our values, true to what we believe in, true to what we believe is our personal best, I do believe the bliss will follow.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And very nice to meet you and have you
Hey guys.
adjacent to the panel. It's good to have you here. All I can say is that part about asking for help so resonates. I'm just listening to Pete talk about planning events. Of course, comedy shows are like one event after the other. And I just had a situation where I had to send out to friends saying, I need to sell like 30 more tickets to this show. And I hated asking. But of course, the response was, everybody asks for help. It's good. Ask for help. So I really appreciate that sentiment. Ken, I think Ken had his hand up. Did you want to ask a question, Ken?
Okay, can everybody hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
Yeah, this kind of took a different direction than I had expected. Very interesting listening to very interesting to listen to everyone. I'll give you a pom-pom shake when I'm done. You know, the past 2 years have been extremely difficult. All sorts of unexpected, unwanted, this and that in rapid succession. And I've been writing about music for over 40 years. International music is my main passion. And I'm trying to figure out how to continue as a music journalist. You know, so many things have gone on. I'm not tech savvy, like the other speaker mentioned. I feel like I am always having to ask people for help because I am never going to be good at that kind of stuff. You know, I'm not good at detail, intricacy, process, procedure. And I was also wondering that, you know, the first time I attended one of these things, it was like, okay, what's bliss? Well, I'd like to have a book published. Sure. And I'd like to get more articles published and all of that. But I'm also starting to wonder, since life has become so different and so challenging, is it also possible that we all have to, I'm not sure exactly how to put this, settle for a smaller definition of what bliss might be. Just participating in this group, and I was nervous about how you all would react to my wonderful fashion sense. But you know, or if I complete an order with Barnes and Noble or, God help me, Amazon or Bandcamp, and that works. You know, I repeatedly get told when I ask for review copies of CDs now, nope, downloads only. I hate that. I will never adjust to it. So, you know, is it a success when my order for something goes through? If I go to the grocery store and they have most of the stuff I'm looking for, you know, let's see, what else did I ask? Yeah, expressing everything. Does cross-dressing relieve some of the tension? It does. Completing small but difficult tasks. Does dressing as the cheerleader in particular reduce tension and stress? And I have discovered that some people do react to this. It's kind of like being a superhero in a way. And yes, I'm a comic book fan. I'll confess to that. But anyway, yeah, great speakers. I enjoyed listening to all of you. The lady who talked about Jannelle, you were talking about international dance, and that kind of mirrors my interest in international music. All I can do dance-wise is shake pom-poms, but I've seen all kinds of dancing. I particularly like it when there's live music with it. But anyway, I would like to keep in touch with you if you're on Facebook or email, whatever it is. I sent you a private message in the chat. So, oh, well, if she's gonna spotlight my video, if she's gonna do that, this is not, me writing about some band from England or Israel or Turkey or some other place. This is me just getting up and releasing tension. And I've learned how to be a little better at it. I can't do what the cheerleaders do now. God, that's complicated. But I'm also 50 years older than most of them, so couldn't do that anyway.
Well, Ken, I appreciate your contribution, your question, and your, and also I'll speak for myself, but I think this is communally felt that you're absolutely an essential and important and valued member of this community.
This is true.
Cheerleader included and cheerleader as adjacent. So very good. And I appreciate the question about, really, you talked both about kind of coping skills and coping with challenges, and also what does a small success look like, which certainly, if anything, this last couple of years has highlighted that for everyone. So I'm not sure if our panelists would like to give some thoughts or feedback.
The one thought I had, is for me, bliss isn't the outcome. The idea that you sell 1 million books, that, and that feels good, but I think the bliss comes before that. The bliss is about you writing the book. It's doing the stuff, that you have a passion that drives you. The sales of the books after that is icing on the cake. It's the outcome, but it's not actually the bliss. I think that's a lot of times we are taught to focus on, the end product instead of the journey of getting to that point. As they say, it's all about the journey and not the destination. So that for me is bliss, is the journey. The destination is going to be what it's going to be. Whether the book sells or not, you can still have bliss in the fact that you put your thoughts down on paper. You opened yourself up and had the courage to speak your mind.
I also like what you said about making connections. That's always been really important to me. And I do, the one thing I can say about writing books is I do have a little bit better idea of how that sausage is made, because I was a minor participant in this one about, the history of the Birchmere. And no one person can write a book. It's impossible. There are other people, proofreaders or editors or people who contribute little bits and pieces. So, it's very interesting to consider if, well, yeah, making connections is great. I like to do it, but I guess all these things are connect. Gee, this sounds redundant. All these things are connected. And, it's difficult to be coming to these realizations and understandings at the age of 70. Better that than never. But yeah, it's just I look forward to meeting you in person one of these days when I feel safe to do that. Meanwhile, I look for you on Facebook and we continue the conversation further.
Cool. Yeah, because I mean, the other thing, Ken, is that the truth be told, it's not just with books. Nothing of merit is ever done by an individual person. That's one of the misnomers we are always given, that somebody created some great thing on their own. No such thing,
But I think
Amazon wasn't made what it is by a single person.
Well, I think our culture kind of encourages this idea of individual self-reliance. And I'm sure that Mr. Questlove did not do this by himself either. So, and it is fabulous. It is absolutely fabulous. Anyway, I could take up.
All right. Are there any other questions from anyone else in the audience? Comments, anything you've been inspired? I know there's a lot of chatter in the chat, which is always good.
Well, if I can add in, again, what I'm hearing is, how do you define success? Is it by some sort of ideas you grew up with and may have infiltrated your thinking? Or is it by, are you being true to yourself? And in that way, are you living an authentic life? So how do you define success?
Yeah, who is speaking now? I can't see your picture.
That's Susan.
I'm not good at this stuff. Chip, help me.
That's okay.
This is Sue. I am Chip's wife, and I'll try to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, maybe I did it. I'm not sure. But anyways, you would think I would understand computers better being Chip's wife, but that's the problem. He solves every problem. Anyways, what I want to say again is, how do you define success? Is it by some kind of external measure, or is it internal? Am I being true to myself? Am I being authentic? And is that success?
I have one additional question. Maybe I'll just start. Maybe this will be the last roundup. I do wonder. There's a podcast. Maybe I like to listen to lots of small business podcasts. Anyway, maybe you listen to How I Built This on NPR. Blah blah blah. Okay, so he always asks at the very end. He says, "Do you think your success was attributed to luck or skill?" So I don't have that question for you, but I do wonder if each of you feels that you have an inherent skill that you've either developed or discovered in yourself, and that has been a contributing piece to your journey. Or maybe if it's just that you're just the hustle, just the sticking to it.
For me, I think it's a merging of the two. That you got to do the hustle and build the skills so that when the luck comes along, you can take advantage of it. I think it's like that fight about kids. Is it nature and nurture? It's an intersection of both.
I agree with Chip very much. I think it's passion. It's very important to be the goal setting and be successful.
It was skill, and what was the other thing? Yes, I'm taking notes. It was skill, and what did you say, Kim?
Well, just the hustle, just working hard.
Oh, okay, you did
working hard and sticking to it.
I would say
you can't really control if you're brilliant at something, but certainly you can always just choose to be one of the hardest workers in the room. So
I was, again, these interesting, because I was thinking one of the things is just pure stubbornness. I mean, when I was working my way through my PhD and it just didn't make any sense that somebody like me could do that, I was just so stubborn. It is that I wasn't going to let myself think I failed, and I wasn't going to, other people knew I had started that, so I wasn't going to let anybody see that I wouldn't finish that. And I think a lot of the things that I've done are both out of maybe stubbornness, but also kind of a vanity or an inner insecurity that if I've made public that I'm going to start something, and I do this deliberately, I make public that I'm going to start something, then I don't want myself or anybody else to see that I failed at finishing it. So I wind up finishing it.
Can I add something to that? I can totally relate to that, Adam. You know, I'm the first college graduate in my family, and I went for my master's degree only because I met so many people I didn't think were that bright or competent that had masters or even PhDs. And then the two people that motivated me the most when I was like struggling to finish my master's, you know, I thought, well, this guy has an MBA and she's got an MBA. And then I was mistaken. They didn't actually have MBAs, but they served as motivation. You know, and I don't usually like feel like a competition, but I kept thinking like I should be able to do this if they completed it. But it did take me a long time to finish my master's because I was working throughout, you know, doing it. And I think the stick-to-itiveness is important. And many of you may have read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell too. Like expertise is gained through repetition, you know, practice. And it's like 10,000 hours, which comes to like 5 years of doing something full time, whether it's playing violin or, you know, doing mathematical equations or, you know, just developing that kind of expertise.
Yeah. Yes. I hope it's okay. I'm wondering can we just get a little picture of our lovely panel here?
Yeah, go ahead, do.
Let's see, I'm gonna just, if everybody wants to look their loveliest, and I will take a little screenshot. Hold on 1 second. Smiles, everybody. 1, 2. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I think you need one with cheerleader in it too.
I actually don't even have one with Lisa in it because I can't fit enough people on my screen. But we'll just have to remember this great audience and how wonderful it is to have everybody here. I think this might be a good point to kind of wrap up and say thank you to our host, Silver Spring Town Center Inc., and Lisa, who really, let's just give it up for Lisa and all the amazing programs she does. And thank you to our panelists who brought their life experience, their wisdom, their vulnerability, their support for this great community. And yeah, this was just a really interesting and fun, wonderful panel to be a part of. So thank you, everybody. I imagine people will stick around for a little bit for a few last, if you just want to say hello, but otherwise have a good night. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you to Kim Levone with Improbable Comedy for hosting. Kim, please let us know when your comedy shows are going on, and maybe Chipp's got a comedy show with us on Thursday, April 20th. So look for our newsletter, which just went out, and join us for that.
Yeah,
That's
the 20th.
One. The 20th, Thursday, the 20th.
Our headliner is a touring comic who won Jimmy Fallon's Seinfeld challenge. She was chosen by Jerry Seinfeld, and Jimmy Fallon is doing the best Seinfeld impersonation. So she's an excellent comedian. So
Cool. That'll be exciting. And then Kim, what's your next comedy show with Improbable?
So we have a lot of really great stuff coming up. But the two soon things, one, we have April 21st, we'll have Comedy as a Second Language at Busboys Tacoma, which will be a great all immigrant lineup of comics. And then in May on the 12th, also at Busboys, we will have the Mother of All Comedy shows, which is, those two are really our most consistent mainstay shows. But really if you've never been to our website and if you're not on our mailing list, we have some fun and great stuff over the summer and coming in the fall. Improbable Comedy turns actually, we thought it was 10 years. Turns out it's actually 11 years. But we're doing the branding as 10 with an asterisk because that's catchier. So anyway, we're very proud of that. And we really would love to see you all at a show. Please feel free to reach out. I'd love to connect outside of this forum also.
Kim, will any of those be online? Is it all in person? Are they mixed? How are you
No, we're not doing online shows, but we do have some outdoor shows planned for when the weather gets good. So definitely those will probably feel more comfortable to some people who aren't ready to go back indoors yet.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Thank you again to Kim, Yukari, Adam, Pete, Chipp, and Jannelle. It's been a great time, and we look forward to seeing you again and to watching you follow your bliss some more, and hopefully we'll all find some bliss along the way. Thanks again, everyone.